In this tutorial, you will learn how to install the Roundcube email client on Linux Ubuntu 22.04 LTS. So Roundcube is basically an open source webmail application that provides users with an intuitive and easy to use interface for managing their emails. In this guide, I'll walk you step by step on how to complete the installation process. So let's take an overview of the steps covered in this tutorial. First, I'll show you how to connect to the Ubuntu server via SSH and update the system repository. Second, I'll show you how to download and install the LAMP stack. Third, I'll show you how to create a MySQL database for Roundcube and configure an Apache virtual host. Fourth, I'll show you how to download and install Roundcube. And finally, I'll then show you how to complete the post-installation setup process. So let's get started with the installation. Alright, so I've set up an instance on the Amazon Web Services Lightsail service. So type in the command sshi, type in the key pair file for the instance, and then enter a username at the IP address for the instance, and then press enter. Type in yes to confirm, and you should now be connected to the instance via SSH. So the exact steps for connecting to your instance largely depend on where you've deployed your server actually. So I'm going to execute the command hostnamectl set hostname, and then I'm going to set that to web hosting. I'm also going to edit the etc host configuration file, and I'm going to enter 127.0.1.1 and then specify webhosting.mydomainname.com and then web hosting at the end there. So save changes to the file, and then you also need to edit the cloud.cfg configuration file. So enter nano etc cloud and then specify the cloud.cfg config file. In this file, I'm going to set the preserve hostname parameter to true. This just makes sure that the custom hostname that we've configured will persist across the reboots that we may do in the near future. So I'm just going to execute the command apt update to update the system repository. And then thereafter I'll then go through to then restart the instance so that all of the changes we've made will actually take effect. So just type in reboot, and that should then go through to restart the Linux Ubuntu instance. So when the restart completes, I'll just reconnect to the instance and then type in the command sudo su. That should then elevate you to root access. And then copy and paste the command for installing the Apache web server as well as the MariaDB database server. So you just simply need to copy and paste the command to install those two. Proceed to then copy and paste the command to start the Apache server as well as the MariaDB database engine. So I'm also going to copy and paste the command for setting Apache and MariaDB to start at system boot up. So you can also get access to this command from the link in the video description. So once that's done, the next thing that I'm actually going to do is to copy and paste a command for running the MySQL secure installation. So you just need to respond to each prompt as I am doing, and this just makes sure that your MariaDB MySQL installation is a bit more secure. So I've completed that, and then the next thing that we're going to do is to install some important dependencies. This ensures that we don't face issues when we install PHP in the next step. So I'm going to add the onrej PHP repository, and this is how we can then be able to install PHP version 8. And then, but before we actually install PHP, I'll first update the system repository and then paste in the command to install PHP version 8. So type in Y to confirm and press enter. So you should now see the PHP installation now in progress. So once that's done, we're actually then going to install the needed PHP dependencies. Alright, so run the command clear so that you can see the command line interface a bit more clearly. And then copy and paste the command for installing the PHP extensions. Enter Y to confirm and press enter. So as you can see, we've actually successfully set up the LAMP stack. We've installed Apache, MariaDB, as well as PHP. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to confirm the PHP version. As you can see, we've got PHP version 8.0.28 installed. So the next thing that I'm going to do is to connect to the MariaDB shell, and we're going to create a database. So type in the command create database, and then I'm going to set the name to Roundcube DB. So proceed to copy and paste the command to create a database user. But I do recommend that you set your own custom database name, username, and password. Run the command flash privileges and then exit out of the MariaDB shell. So we've actually successfully created a blank database that the Roundcube web application will actually use to save its settings and user-generated data. So the next thing that we're going to do is to create a directory within the Apache virtual host root. So copy and paste the command to create the vh_roundcube directory, and then copy and paste the command to create the Apache virtual host configuration file. So in this file, simply copy and paste the configuration, and then you just simply need to adjust the server name to your own custom domain name, as well as the server admin to your own custom email address. So I'm just going to update the server name to webmail so that it reads webmail.mydomainname.com. And that's the domain name that we actually use to access the Roundcube web application. So the next thing that we're going to do is to run a command to enable the newly created virtual host configuration file, and then you then simply need to reload the Apache system service for the changes to actually take effect. So execute the command systemctl reload Apache 2. And then finally, I'll just run a status check on the Apache service, and as you can see, it's marked as active and running. So I'm just going to clear my screen, and then we're going to paste in a command to download the Roundcube application files. When the download completes, I'm just going to run the ls command to check the file that we've actually just downloaded. And as you can see, we've got that tar.gz file that we've downloaded. So I'm going to extract this file to reveal its contents. And then once the extraction process is complete, I'm then going to copy this file over to the vh_roundcube directory that we set as the virtual host root. So move into that directory, and if you list out the files, you actually see that we've got that Roundcube mail 1.6.1 directory. But I would like to rename this directory to public, something that is a bit more easier to remember if you need to reference to this directory. So if you change into this public directory, you actually see that we've got the Roundcube web application files in this directory. So finally, I'm just going to set the necessary permissions and the owner of the public directory actually. So copy and paste the command to change the owner of the public directory to the www data user and group, and then set the permissions on the public directory to 755. So once that has been done, the next thing you simply need to do is to then initialize the Roundcube database. So I'm just going to copy and paste a command to run the initialization process. So type in your MySQL password to simply proceed, and that will actually do the initialization. Open a new browser window and enter the domain name pointing to the Roundcube web installer, and you'll see a page showing all of the important components. They should all be marked as OK, and then click on Next. On the Roundcube Create Config page, scroll down to the database setup page. Here you need to specify the database name, the database username, as well as the database password that you actually created in the previous step. So once that's been done, you then need to click on Next. So I'm just going to enable a few plugins on the plugin section, such as the auto logout plugin, the emoticons plugin, the help plugin, as well as the the password plugin. Let me just leave that actually, and I'll just do the zip download plugin, and then click on the create config button. Click on continue, and the Roundcube web application should actually now be good to go. So I'm just going to return back to the command line interface, and the next thing you need to do is to delete the installer directory. So move into the public directory and then run the command rm-rf and then specify the installer directory. Once that's done, I'm going to return back to the Roundcube web installer and refresh the page. So you should now see the Roundcube login page. But you also notice that the connection we're using is marked as not secure, and we need to correct this. So return back to the SSH client and then copy and paste the command to install the certbot utility as well as the Python 3 certbot Apache add-on. So this will actually allow us to request for a Let's Encrypt SSL certificate. So simply execute the command sudo certbot Apache, and when you press enter, you should now see a prompt asking you of the email address that you'd like to use for the request. So I'm just going to type in the email address that I usually use for installations like this. So I'm going to type in yes to agree to the terms of service and agree to sharing my email address. So select 1 to select the domain and press enter. And when the request process is successful, you should now see the message successfully deployed certificate for your domain.com. So if you return back to the Roundcube web application and refresh the page, you actually notice that the connection we are now using is actually marked as secure. And let's just view the certificate details, and you actually see that we're actually using a Let's Encrypt SSL certificate to access the system. So that's been it, guys. That's a quick look at how to install the Roundcube webmail client on Linux Ubuntu 22.04 LTS. Please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. I hope this tutorial has been informative, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.